Hello there and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my review, finally, of the Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette. I'm going to show you some swatches, talk about the formula. I'm also going to give you a demo of an actual neutral everyday look that can be created with this palette. Who knew? And then as an extra bonus, I thought it would be fun to share with you what my personal color selection would have been if Urban Decay had put me in charge of this palette. So if that all sounds fun to you, I hope you'll make sure you're subscribed, hit that thumbs up button, and now let's get started. Okay, so as we start off, this palette retails for $49, and the packaging, as always, Urban Decay knocked it out of the park. It's that hard plastic, has raised lettering, and then it has a beautiful shimmer sparkle, kind of holographic look underneath. And there are 12 shadows in here, and one thing I want to note before we get any further is it's 12 times 0.95 grams. That is the same as the Naked Honey palette, but it's less than they put in the Naked Heat palette and less than they put in the Naked Cherry palette. So something just to keep in mind. They are pulling back a little bit, even though the pan size looks the same. They've actually filled it with slightly less product. And it came with a dual-ended brush. This is the exact brush that came in the Naked Cherry palette. And I love the pencil end of this brush. That's my favorite part of the whole brush. It does have a full-length mirror. And now for the shades in here. I will put up some swatches here on the screen. And this is, in my recollection, the first time in swatching an Urban Decay palette that I actually had to use an eyeshadow primer on my arm to get the swatches to look like this. So there are only 3 that are straight up mattes in this palette. The rest have some level of shimmer or sparkle in them. And personally, that's one of the cons for me because I feel like this needs a couple more mattes in order to help create more cohesive looks. Now we'll get a little more into the color selection in a moment, but as far as the formulation goes, I have found these, most of them, not all, but many of them to be very dry and just lacking in pigmentation. This shade right here, I do use this in my look today. It's so pretty in the pan, but it really takes a lot of work and a lot of building to get it to show up on your eyes. Now there are a couple of shades that I absolutely love. This is one of my favorites. This is Hacked. I think this is one of the most beautiful, universal, crease colors that I own, and I will continue to use this color from this palette. The second one is Trippin'. I think this is a beautiful inner corner highlight. It's smooth, the formulation, it's pigmented. I think they did a great job with this shade. I also really love Dazed. I love a good peachy, sparkly shade, and this one is really pretty. Slightly gritty, but it translates well onto the lid. And then I would say in the purple end, I feel like Cyberpunk and Purple Dust are pretty shades, and those perform quite well. This last shade, I do also use this shade in my look today, and it works kind of like a matte, and here it swatches well, but you'll see it actually does take quite a bit of building on the lid. So that brings us now to the color spectrum. So I was quite surprised when I got this in person. I had seen pictures online, but it wasn't until I opened it and saw it that I thought, it kind of almost looks like 2 separate palettes. You know, like there was a meeting of a group of people and half wanted the new Naked palette to have these colors and the other half wanted this, and they just put it together. So I personally have found this to not be a very beginner-friendly palette. I also feel like because of the number of shimmer / satin shades in here, that it's not real friendly to those of us with mature skin. And the only reason why I say that is because when you're blending through the crease, if you have looser skin, more textured eyelids like I do, and most of us over 40 do, it's hard to create much of a blend with a shimmery satin shade without kind of that highlighting that texture. And especially when you're talking about bold shades like this, that's where I wish that they would have actually taken a couple of these bold purple shades and turned them into mattes. And this transformative shade, well, I guess it's fun. And what I discovered is if you put it over this dark shade, I'll do that for you here. So there is the shade Digital. And then if you take Lucid and put it over the top of it, it creates kind of a unique, almost turquoise color. So, I mean, that's fun, but for me, what I have always looked forward to with naked palettes, even though they're not neutral anymore for the most part, they all have kind of a color scheme, you've still been able to create a lot of looks that can go either nighttime or daytime appropriate. And I just feel like a lot of these shades and the finishes, that's very important, just don't translate well for me personally on a daily basis. It's a fun palette. I do feel like it's geared maybe more for teens, 20s, 30-year-olds. It's not because of the colors, because as I'm going to show you now my Dream palette, you'll see and you know I love putting color on my eyes. However, I think with a few slight tweaks, this palette could have been like my Dream Ultraviolet Naked palette. So let me show you the color spectrum and finishes if I had been in charge of this palette. All right, so as you're looking at these swatches, these come from multiple different palettes, a few individual shadows like from Sydney Gray's ColourPop, but you kind of get the idea. I added quite a few more mattes, and there are some bright purpley pinky shades, but they're in a matte formula, and so I think that makes them easier to work with. I even threw in a pretty green, which by the way comes from this Natasha Denona palette, but it's a green that I feel like is more wearable, so you can throw in that little bit of pop of fun, because I do love green and purple together. And I did also put in some peachy colors, but everything else kind of has a cooler tone to them. I feel like you can more easily pair these shadows together in this palette without having to think too hard about it. Most everything will go with the other shadows in the palette. So that's just a glimpse of the color spectrum that I personally would have loved to see in an ultraviolet palette. And I get the idea because as I painted my nails today, I used one of my favorites from Zoya, and it's called Aurora, and it has the holographic shimmer, which has that peach and kind of blue and green shift and all that. But I just wish that they would have chosen the finishes a little bit differently and changed up the shades just slightly. So that's my take on the palette. Now let's go ahead and get into the demo of this simple, soft, everyday look. Okay, for my eyeshadow primer today, I used the NARS tinted eyeshadow base in light. And now in the palette, there is this beautiful light shade, but it has quite a lot of pearl. And it's just a little more than I want along my brow bone highlight. So I am gonna pull in just one other shade from another palette. Hang with me here. This is the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. I'm just gonna use this shade right here and use this just to give us a nice little base. We are going to use that light shade from the Violet palette, but on its own, it's just a little too much. Okay, now we're gonna go in with just a tiny little bit of this right here at the arch of my brow, and you can see it just gives a real nice, subtle glow if you put it over the top of another shadow. All right, now we're gonna go in with this shade right here, which is peachy. We're gonna I'm using the M504 from Morphe, and I'm putting this at the top of the crease, so really not taking it into the crease, but just above. And then I'm going to go in now with one of my favorite colors. Actually, I think it's my favorite color in the whole palette, and that's this one, which is Hacked. So we used Trippin' and then Mind Slip, and now we're gonna go in with Hacked. using that same brush. And I'm going to just build this up here in the outer corner and through the crease. You can see it really builds and blends nicely. Now on the lid, I want to show you this shade right here, the VR shade, which it looks like it's just going to be such a cool color, but it's pretty much just the base color that comes off. There is a little bit of sparkle when you turn your head certain ways, so a little bit of the sparkle transfers, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to just apply this all over the lid though, because I do like the base color that it provides. And I just find this does apply better with your finger. And then over the top of that, I'm going to apply the shade Dazed. And Dazed is another one of my favorites. I just love these kind of peachy, shimmery colors. And I'm going to now just work that right over the top of that other color. And those two combined, I just think are so pretty. All right, so to darken the outer corner, I'm gonna take the brush that comes in the palette and we're gonna go in with the darkest shade here, which is Digital. Now, I wanna show you this kind of on its own before we apply eyeliner. So this does have a little bit of a satin sheen. So I, with my more mature lids, have to be careful not to pack too much of this here. So I'm keeping this a little bit lower than the crease and kind of darkening this. And then with what's left on the brush, I will take that up a little bit higher towards the crease. And then I'm going to smudge out, or blend out, I should say, this top edge. I'm going to go in with a Morphe M433. I need to clean brushes, so I'm having to use these rather than my BK Beauty brushes. But I'm going to go back into Hacked, which is the color we put through the crease. And now I'm going to just use this in a little more intense way here in the outer corner. Because like I said, I don't want too much of that sheen from that dark color in this outermost part where I have some lines and looser skin. And then I'll take a little bit more of that through the crease on that same brush. And then go back one more time with the shade Dazed and just place a little more right kind of in the center of the mobile lid there, just to make sure that is nice and bright and pigmented right there. Now we're going to take some eyeliner. This is the Pixie Endless Silky Eye Pen. You know my thoughts on that. Black Caviar. I do love this pencil though. And what we're going to do is I am going to just kind of put a little bit in the roots of the lashes on the inner part of my eye here. And then I am going to just lift the outer eye by taking this line, making it thicker. So almost from the midpoint, almost if you draw a straight line out, not quite straight, but almost, that is the direction we're gonna go. I'm gonna wipe off that brush and just smudge the top edge of that liner just ever so slightly. I don't want it to be too harsh. And then I'll go back to this shadow right here, Digital, and just place a little bit of that along the top edge of that liner. And then on the lower lash line, I want to use this one. This is new to me. This is from NYX. It's their Epic Wear liner stick, and it's in the shade Dusty Mauve. I know it looks like it should be a lip liner, but I think it's so fun. Looks really pretty on the eyes and is very similar to the shade that I have through the crease. So we're going to start with this as our base. So you can see it's not overtly pink, it's not bright pink or anything, but just really pretty. And then we're going to take this M432 and a little more digital. We're going to use this just right up against the lower lash line to connect to where we stopped with our eyeliner on the upper lash line there. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of the shade Hacked, a little below that line, just to set that liner in place. Okay, after cleaning up under the eyes, applying mascara, a little bronzer, concealer, now it's time to finish up the eyes. So we're going to go in with the first shade here, Trippin'. I'm first going to use my pinky here to apply it to the inner corner. This really does make a great inner corner highlight shade. I'm going to take the E30 from Sigma, add a little more of that, and now blend it onto kind of the inner part of this upper lid here. Very brightening, it's not chunky, so it is really perfect for the inner corner. Okay, so I know it's an eye tutorial, but I'm going to show you what I'm using on the rest of my face as far as color products. So for blush, I'm going to use this new face duo from e.l.f. This is the color Lychee. I'm going to use this blush, such a pretty kind of neutral pink shade. And I'm using the BK Beauty 104 brush. It's a really nice formula. And then let's go ahead and just use the highlighter that's in there. For lip liner, I'm going to use this one from Becca. It is the Ultimate Lip Definer in Breezy. And I'm going to use this new MAC lipstick. It's new to me. It's the shade Patisserie. And then finish with a little gloss. This is the Bare Minerals Moxie Gloss in 24 karat. All right, so here's our finished everyday look. I think it's very wearable. It's definitely something that I will continue to recreate with this palette. However, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't a palette that I'm going to be reaching for a whole lot personally, and it is sadly one of my least favorite in the Naked palette line. I'm curious to know though, have you picked this palette up? Is it one of your favorites? Or would you have preferred my dream palette color selection? Let me know that in the comment section below. Thank you as always so much for watching. Be sure you're subscribed, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.